My mom cleaned this school, but you paid someone else. The little black girl's voice was so quiet it should have disappeared beneath the applause, beneath the camera shutters, beneath the soft music floating through Ashbourne Preparatory Academy's marble lobby. But it did not disappear. It landed on the white billionaire's hand just as he reached for the silver pen, and Charles Whitaker stopped moving. 30 minutes earlier, the lobby smelled of lilies, floor polish, and a perfume Charles did not recognize. Something sharp and expensive that clung to the air like a secret. The school had dressed itself for money. Crystal lights burned above the marble floor. Gold letters on a navy banner read the Margaret Whitaker Hall of Integrity, named for Charles's late wife, whose portrait watched from the far wall with the same calm eyes he still avoided looking at too long. Charles stood near the front steps with 2 security men behind him, a foundation lawyer at his left, and Dr. Evelyn Hartwell beside him in a cream suit that looked untouched by weather, work, or doubt. He had come to announce a new gift, another 7 figures to expand scholarships, restore the library, and keep Margaret's name shining in a place he believed still deserved it. He had not slept much the night before. His house in Greenwich had been too quiet, the kind of quiet that made every hallway feel like an accusation. On his desk that morning, Margaret's old reading glasses still rested beside a stack of contracts, exactly where he had left them 3 years ago. He had told himself this donation was not grief. It was legacy. Then the glass doors opened. No one noticed at first except the receptionist, whose smile tightened. A girl stepped inside wearing a faded red dress with a careful stitch along the hem, black shoes scuffed white at the toes, and a blue backpack that sagged from one shoulder. She was small, maybe 9, with dark brown skin, neat braids, and eyes that moved across the room not like a lost child's, but like someone counting exits. A few parents turned. A man near the coffee station lowered his cup. The girl walked forward slowly, each step too soft for the size of the room. Charles saw her then, but did not understand why she was there. Dr. Hartwell leaned toward her assistant, Claire Voss, and whispered something. Claire's face did not change, but her fingers closed around the black folder in her arms. The girl stopped 10 feet from Charles. She did not cry. She did not beg. She pulled a folded paper from her backpack, smoothing it once against her dress with trembling hands. My mom cleaned this school, she said. Dr. Hartwell smiled quickly, too quickly. Sweetheart, this is a private event. The girl looked past her, straight at Charles. But you paid someone else. The lobby seemed to lose sound in layers. Charles glanced down at the paper as the girl held it out. Timesheet, Marielle Baptiste. Night custodial access. Rows of hours. Long nights. Lower gym. Science wing. Portrait hall. Then, stamped across the bottom in red, 3 words. 0 hours paid. Charles did not take the paper at first. He had seen forged documents before, staged grievances, public ambushes designed to bend powerful men in front of cameras. His eyes moved from the girl's face to Dr. Hartwell's composed smile, then to Claire Voss, who had gone still in a way that did not belong to innocence. The girl noticed too. She lifted the bottom corner of the timesheet with one finger. There, printed in small gray type beneath the unpaid stamp, was a code Charles had seen on foundation invoices but never on a janitor's paper. MWF Service 17. The code sat at the bottom of the page like a splinter under clean skin. Charles looked at it once, then again, slower this time, while the lobby pretended to breathe around him. MWF Service 17. He did not say the letters aloud. He only drew his phone from inside his jacket, angled it low, and took a single photograph of the timesheet before anyone could ask why. The flash did not fire. Dr. Hartwell's smile remained in place, but it had gone thinner, stretched across her face like plastic wrap. Mr. Whitaker, she said softly, almost warmly. I'm so sorry. This child must have found that in the trash. A few people relaxed at the word trash, as if it gave them permission to stop caring. Someone near the refreshment table stirred. Coffee with a silver spoon, and the tiny clink against porcelain sounded indecently normal. Naomi heard it. Charles could tell by the slight movement in her eyes. the way she noticed everything without seeming to. Claire Voss stepped forward then, her navy folder pressed to her chest. "Sweetheart," she said, bending just enough to look kind but not enough to touch the marble with her knees. "Why don't you give that to me? Adults will handle it." Naomi pulled the paper back before Claire's fingers reached the corner. Not quickly, carefully, like she knew sudden movements made grown-ups call children difficult. "No, ma'am," she said. "My mama told me not to let the original leave my hand." Claire's face did not change, but one of her earrings trembled. It was a small thing, a pearl moving where the rest of her stayed still, and Charles stored it away. Dr. Hartwell gave a quiet laugh meant for donors, trustees, and nervous parents. "You see, the poor child has been coached. We should not turn a ceremonial mourning into a spectacle." She placed one hand over her heart, the practiced gesture of a woman who knew cameras were watching. Ashbourne cares deeply for every member of its community. Naomi looked at the polished floor beneath her shoes. "Then why did the door know my mother's name?" The sentence landed differently. Not louder, just heavier. Charles turned toward her. "What door?" Naomi reached into the pocket of her red dress and brought out a cracked plastic key card on a frayed yellow lanyard. She held it flat on her palm. "Marielle Baptiste. Night custodial access." The photo was faded, but the woman's tired eyes were clear enough. On the back, in gray thermal print worn almost invisible, were timestamps Naomi had outlined with pencil so they could still be read.
2:13 am. 3:46 am. 4:08 am.
"Trash doesn't open locked doors at 2 in the morning," Naomi said. No one laughed this time. The security guard by the west entrance shifted his weight, and Charles saw recognition pass over his face before fear closed it down. Dr. Hartwell did not look at the guard. She did not need to. Her silence reached him like a hand on the throat. Charles noticed that too. He placed his silver pen on the glass table, exactly beside the timesheet, and asked in a voice so mild it made the room lean in, "Does that card still work?" Claire answered too fast. "Of course not." Naomi looked at her. "Then how did I get in?" For the first time, Dr. Hartwell's eyes moved to the lobby camera above the reception desk. Charles followed her glance and saw the small black dome pointed toward the doors. Its red light was off. Charles kept his eyes on the dead red light above the reception desk for 1 second longer than anyone expected. Then he looked back at Naomi's key card, at the pencil-darkened times on the back, at the timesheet still folded against her dress like a shield. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse. He only said, "No one touches the paper." Claire's hand, still hovering near Naomi's wrist, withdrew as if the air had changed temperature. Dr. Hartwell gave a small, practiced breath through her nose. "Charles, surely we can spare the child this embarrassment." The way she said embarrassment made Naomi's shoulders stiffen, but the girl did not look down. She slid the key card back into her pocket and pressed the timesheet flat with both palms. "It's not mine," she said. "It belongs to my mama." Charles heard something then that had nothing to do with evidence. Not pleading. Ownership. The kind of dignity adults often mistook for attitude when it came from a child with worn shoes. He turned slightly to his assistant, who had been standing near the flower arrangement with a tablet clutched against her blazer. "Call Graham," he said. "Tell him to come through the north entrance." Quietly. Dr. Hartwell's smile faltered for less than half a second. Claire lowered her folder, then lifted it again, too late to hide the corner of a blue form stamped volunteer service classification. Charles saw it. Naomi saw it too. Her eyes flicked to the folder, then back to Claire's face. "That paper is not the same one," she said. Claire laughed gently, but there was a scrape under it now. "Sweetheart, you don't understand employment documents." "I understand when grown-ups change words after midnight," Naomi replied. The lobby went still again. Charles studied her carefully. "What does that mean?" Naomi reached into the front pocket of her backpack and removed a smaller piece of paper, folded so many times the creases had turned soft as cloth. She did not hand it to him. She laid it on the glass table beside the silver pen. It was a receipt from a convenience store on Northern Boulevard, dated 3 Fridays earlier, 4:27 a.m. 1 black coffee, 1 chocolate milk, 1 pack of crackers. Naomi tapped the time with her finger. My mama bought me this after her shift because the buses were late. She smelled like lemon wax. She always smelled like lemon wax after the portrait hall. Charles looked toward the far wall, where Margaret's portrait hung under warm museum lights, the brass nameplate spotless enough to reflect the chandeliers. He remembered touching that nameplate last month and thinking the school cared. He had never wondered who polished it. On the back of the timesheet, in careful handwriting, was one line Naomi had not shown before. Friday, Margaret Hall, 11:40 p.m. to 4:10 a.m. Beside it were 2 initials in blue ink. C.V. Claire Voss closed her folder with a soft snap, and Charles finally understood that the first clue had not wandered into his event by accident. It had been carried there by a child who knew exactly which adults were lying. Claire's folder closed, and for a moment the sound was louder than the chandeliers, louder than the cameras, louder than the donors pretending not to listen. Dr. Hartwell moved first, graceful and efficient, as if she had spent her whole life learning how to turn disaster into procedure. "We are going to step into my office," she said, not to Naomi, but around her. "This lobby is not an appropriate place for sensitive personnel matters." 2 board members nodded at once. A trustee in a charcoal suit murmured that privacy protected everyone. A security man opened the frosted glass door leading toward the administrative wing, and the movement itself made Naomi smaller, pushing her out of the marble light and into a hallway lined with framed acceptance letters, athletic trophies, and photographs of children whose uniforms cost more than her mother's weekly. Groceries. Charles followed, silent, his phone still warm in his palm from the photograph he had taken. He had not decided what he believed. Not yet. Years of wealth had taught him that truth could be staged, pain could be performed, and public rooms could become traps. But something in Naomi's careful hands, in the way she guarded the timesheet instead of waving it, kept him from looking away. Dr. Hartwell's office smelled like cedar, leather, and expensive tea. Behind her desk, rain tapped lightly against tall windows overlooking the manicured courtyard. Naomi stood on the rug because no one offered her a chair. Charles noticed that only after he had already sat down. So did Naomi. She did not ask. She simply shifted her backpack higher on her shoulder and held the timesheet against her chest. Claire placed her folder on the desk and spoke in a voice soft enough to sound kind. "Mr. Whitaker, you know how these situations can happen. Families under pressure sometimes misunderstand temporary access, volunteer initiatives, community service programs. It is unfortunate, but not malicious." A board member named Preston Vale leaned forward, folding his hands. "The child may genuinely believe what she is saying. That does not make it payroll fraud." The words were polite, clean, almost reasonable, and somehow colder than an insult. Naomi looked at Preston's polished shoes, then at the silver bowl of wrapped chocolates on Dr. Hartwell's desk. Her stomach made a tiny sound in the quiet. Claire heard it. Her expression softened in a way that made Charles uneasy. She opened a drawer, took out a granola bar, and held it toward Naomi like a settlement. "Here, sweetheart. You must be hungry." Naomi did not take it. "My mama said food is not an answer when someone owes you wages." The room went still. Charles's eyes lifted. Preston stopped moving his pen. Dr. Hartwell's smile did not vanish, but it lost its warmth. "Naomi," she said, using the girl's name for the first time, "if your mother has concerns, she may schedule an appointment through the proper channels." Naomi reached into her pocket and placed Marielle's key card on the desk. She tried. 3 times. Ms. Voss canceled them. Claire looked almost amused. "I handle hundreds of schedules." "Then why did you remember I was hungry?" Naomi asked. No one answered. Dr. Hartwell stood, signaling the conversation was over. "We will review the documents internally," she said, already reclaiming control. But as Claire gathered the folder, one blue form slid halfway out, and Charles saw the same initials again beside a line that read reclassify all-night custodial hours under MWF Service 17. The blue form remained exposed for only a second before Claire pressed it flat beneath her palm. But Charles had already read enough. Reclassify all-night custodial hours under MWF Service 17. The word reclassify did not belong in a room where everyone had just claimed nothing had happened. Dr. Hartwell noticed his eyes and moved with the gentleness of a surgeon. Administrative language, she said. Unfortunate, but ordinary. Preston Vale cleared his throat. Schools partner with families in many ways. Service arrangements can be misunderstood, especially when there are language barriers. Naomi's hand tightened around the strap of her backpack. She did not like the way he said language barriers, as if her mother's accent had swallowed her paycheck. Charles looked at the keycard on the desk, then at the timesheet, then at Claire's folder. Show me the official classification. Claire opened her laptop, fingers moving quickly, too quickly, and turned the screen toward him. Marielle Baptiste appeared under a clean digital heading. Margaret Whitaker Community Service Initiative. Volunteer support.
No guayi soud.
It was neat. It was legal looking. It was exactly the kind of page powerful people loved because it asked them to stop thinking. Rain tapped harder against the office windows. Somewhere beyond the wall, a printer began humming, then stopped as if someone had changed their mind. Naomi looked at the screen for a long moment. Then she unzipped the smallest pocket of her backpack and removed an old phone wrapped in a sock. The screen was cracked from corner to corner, held together by clear tape. My mama's phone dies fast, she said. So I save the things she says matter. Claire's voice, sharpened by one thin degree. Naomi, that is private property. Naomi did not look at her. She placed the phone on the desk but kept 2 fingers on it. No, ma'am. It's ours. Charles leaned closer. Naomi unlocked it with a slow pattern. The photo gallery opened to a picture of a shoe store receipt dated 6 weeks earlier. Non-slip work shoes. $32.87. The receipt itself would have meant nothing, except for the note written across the back in blue ink. Required for night staff. CV. Naomi swiped once. Another image appeared. A locker room sign printed on Ashbourne letterhead. All night staff must wear approved shoes past 10 p.m. Volunteers may not access chemical storage. She swiped again. This one was darker, taken in a kitchen under yellow light. Marielle's hand held a voicemail transcript that had only half saved before the phone cut off. Claire Voss. If you want your daughter considered for the scholarship desk, stop asking payroll about those hours. Charles sat back very slowly. No one in the office spoke. The word scholarship desk reached somewhere old in him, somewhere Margaret still lived, because his wife had created that desk for children whose parents were invisible to rooms like this. Dr. Hartwell folded her hands. A partial voicemail transcript is not proof of intent. Charles looked at her then, not at Claire, but at the woman he had trusted for 7 years to protect Margaret's name. No, he said quietly. But it is the first time today you knew what it would say before you heard it. Charles did not answer Dr. Hartwell right away. He let the silence stay in the office until it became something everyone had to sit inside. Then he turned the old phone gently toward Naomi, careful not to move her fingers from the edge. May my attorney make a copy of this? He asked. Without taking it from you? Naomi studied him the way children study adults when they have learned that soft voices can still hide locked doors. A copy, she said. Not the phone. Not the phone, Charles promised. Claire almost smiled again, but stopped before it reached her mouth. She still believed he was managing optics, calming a child, preserving the event. Dr. Hartwell believed it too. That helped him. Charles looked at Graham Ellis, who had arrived without ceremony through the side hall and now stood near the bookcase with his briefcase unopened. Chain of custody, Charles said quietly. Photos, timestamps, no originals removed. Graham nodded once. No drama. No accusation. Just procedure, the kind that made liars nervous later. Dr. Hartwell folded her hands over her desk blotter. I appreciate your caution, Charles, but perhaps we should reschedule the dedication. This has clearly become emotionally charged. Not yet, Charles said. He rose slowly, walked to the window, and looked down at the courtyard where waiters in black vests were still arranging champagne flutes for donors who had no idea the morning had shifted beneath them. Rain gathered on the glass in thin silver lines. For one brief moment, the room softened into ordinary sound. Water tapping the window, a distant vacuum cleaner in the hallway, the faint clink of a spoon against a cup somewhere beyond the office door. Then Charles saw Naomi watching that hallway, not the adults. "What is it?" he asked. She hesitated. "That vacuum is too loud for morning." Preston Vale gave a polite little breath, almost a laugh. "Custodial equipment makes noise, dear." Naomi did not look at him. "My mama said they only use that one at night because the cord sparks." Charles turned toward Graham. "Find out who is cleaning this wing right now." Graham stepped out. Claire shifted in her chair. It was the first uncontrolled movement she had made. While they waited, Charles opened his foundation portal on his phone. Not the public dashboard, but the old administrative archive Margaret had once insisted remained searchable by invoice code. He typed MWF Service 17. 14 months of payments appeared. Night Custodial Labor Support. Paid in full. Approved by Ashbourne Preparatory Academy. Countersigned by Dr. Evelyn Hartwell. Charles kept his face still, but something in his chest went cold and flat. Graham returned with a photocopy still warm from the hall printer. The worker pushing the vacuum was not listed as staff. She wore a temporary badge with no name, only volunteer support. Naomi looked at the badge, then at Charles. "That's what they gave my mama after she asked for payroll." Charles looked back at the invoices, at Evelyn's perfect signature repeated month after month, and understood with a quiet shame far heavier than anger that he had not been fooled by strangers. He had been trusting the woman who taught him where not to look. Charles did not close the foundation portal. He left the invoices open on his phone, face down on the desk, as if they meant nothing. Then he looked at Dr. Hartwell with the same polite calm he had once used in boardrooms before removing a man from a company he built. "I would like to finish the dedication," he said. Claire's eyes lifted too quickly. Preston Vale looked relieved. Dr. Hartwell recovered first, smoothing the front of her cream jacket. "Of course, that would be wise. But before I speak," Charles continued, "I want to understand the community service language. For the record." The words "for the record" passed through the room like a draft under a locked door. Graham opened his briefcase and set a small audio recorder on the desk. Not hidden, not dramatic, just there, its red light blinking once every few seconds. No one objected. That was the trap. Charles turned to Naomi. "Would you be willing to wait here while adults answer a few questions?" Naomi glanced at the recorder, then at the old phone still under her fingers. "I can wait," she said. "But I want to hear." Preston almost smiled. "Personnel matters are not for children." Naomi looked at him with tired patience. "Then why did they put my mama's work under a children's scholarship program?" The room did not move. A glass of water sat untouched near Claire's laptop, small bubbles clinging to the inside as if even the water was holding its breath. Charles looked at Dr. Hartwell. "Answer her." Dr. Hartwell's hand stopped on the back of her chair. For a second, only the recorder's tiny red blink marked time. "The initiative supports families who contribute volunteer hours to the Ashbourne community," she said carefully. "So Marielle Baptiste volunteered?" Charles asked. "According to the records, yes. And volunteers do not receive wages." "Correct." Naomi's brow pinched, not in confusion, but because she had caught something simple. "Then why did Ms. Voss tell my mama to buy shoes for night staff?" Claire gave a soft laugh. "Safety recommendations can apply broadly." Naomi shook her head.
No.
The sign said volunteers may not access chemical storage. Charles's eyes moved to Graham. Graham placed the printed locker room sign beside the recorder. Claire's phone buzzed on the desk. Once, twice. She looked at it but did not touch it. Charles spoke even more quietly. "Dr. Hartwell, if Marielle was a volunteer, who authorized her key card for chemical storage after 10 p.m.? I would have to check facilities, Dr. Hartwell said. Then check now. Her hand remained on the chair. She did not reach for the phone. Naomi looked toward the hallway. Mr. Alvarez knows, she said. Claire's face changed before anyone else reacted. Just a flicker, but enough. Graham opened the door, and the older maintenance man stepped in holding a gray envelope with both hands. I kept the backup logs, he said, because the little girl asked me if doors remember people too. Dr. Hartwell looked from the envelope to Charles, then to Naomi, and in that silent, blinking red light, she understood the child was no longer standing alone. Mr. Alvarez placed the gray envelope on Dr. Hartwell's desk as gently as if it contained something breakable. No one reached for it at first. The recorder kept blinking. Claire's phone buzzed again, then went dark. Dr. Hartwell looked at the envelope, not with fear exactly, but with the cold calculation of someone measuring how much truth could still be managed before it became public. Charles watched her face and felt something inside him settle into a harder shape. Open it, he said. Graham slid a thumb beneath the flap and removed 3 things. A printed access log, a small flash drive labeled Hall Backup B, and a copy of an invoice with the Ashbourne seal at the top. Naomi stood on her toes to see the table. That's the one, she said softly. Charles looked at her. Which one? Naomi pointed not at the video drive, not at the access log, but at the invoice. My mama said the blue paper was the paper that made people disappear. Claire spoke quickly. Maintenance staff should not have retained financial documents. Mr. Alvarez kept his hands folded in front of him. I retained building records. That is not your department, Claire said. Neither was erasing people, he answered. The room went very quiet. Graham connected the flash drive to his laptop. A video file appeared, grainy and gray, stamped with the date and time from 3 weeks earlier. Margaret Portrait Hall.
2:13 a.m.
Marielle Baptiste entered the frame pushing a janitor's cart. Her hair tied back, rubber gloves on, moving slowly beneath the portrait of Margaret Whittaker. She cleaned the brass nameplate with careful circles, then wiped the floor below it until the marble caught the light. A minute later, Claire Voss appeared in the hallway. She handed Marielle a paper and pointed to a clipboard. The camera had no rich sound, only thin, distant audio, but the words came through clearly enough. Sign the volunteer classification, Marielle. If payroll sees your name again, your daughter's scholarship application goes nowhere. Naomi did not move. She had already heard it. Charles had not. His face went still first, then pale. He looked at Margaret's portrait frozen on the laptop screen, then at the invoice Graham had placed beside it. MWF Service 17. Night Custodial Labor Support. Paid in full. $486,000 over 14 months. Approved by Ashbourne. Countersigned by Evelyn Hartwell. Authorized through Whittaker Foundation funds. Charles opened his mouth, but nothing came out. For years, he had written checks in his wife's name and called it service. For years, he had stood in clean halls and mistaken polished floors for integrity. And somewhere beneath that shine, a woman had worked through the night while her hours were renamed, her pay redirected, and her child told to wait outside the doors Margaret's legacy was supposed to open. Naomi reached into her backpack and took out the original timesheet. She placed it beside the invoice, lining up the code with a child's careful precision. You paid them, she whispered. They just never paid her. Dr. Hartwell lowered herself into her chair. Claire looked toward the door, but Charles's security man was already standing in front of it, calm and silent. Charles picked up the invoice, then set it down flat, as if placing a verdict on the table. His voice, when it returned, was almost gentle. Graham, call the state labor investigator. The words did not explode in the room. They settled. Graham stepped into the hall with his phone already to his ear, and for the first time all morning, no one tried to explain Naomi away. Dr. Hartwell stared at the invoice as if the paper had betrayed her, though the paper had only done what paper always did. It remembered. Within an hour, the dedication stage in the lobby stood under the same bright lights. But Charles did not read the speech Ashbourne had prepared. He folded it once, placed it inside his jacket, and set Marielle's unpaid timesheet on the podium inside a clear plastic evidence sleeve. The donors leaned forward. The board members stopped whispering. Naomi stood near the side wall with her mother, one hand holding Marielle's sleeve, the old phone tucked safely in her backpack. Charles looked out at the room he had entered as a benefactor and now saw as a witness stand. "I came here today to honor integrity," he said. "A child had to show me where it had been stolen." No one clapped. It was not that kind of sentence. Behind him, Dr. Hartwell sat pale and silent, while the board chair announced her immediate suspension pending an independent investigation. Claire Voss was escorted not by police, not in spectacle, but by two trustees and Charles's attorney, who had already preserved her laptop, the payroll records, and the foundation invoices. Sterling Facility Group received notice before noon that its contract was terminated and its billing records would be turned over to state labor authorities. By evening, Ashbourne's board had frozen all discretionary accounts tied to the Margaret Whittaker Foundation and appointed an outside auditor with power Charles himself could not overrule. That mattered to him. For the first time in years, he understood that generosity without accountability could become another locked door. Marielle did not want a camera in her face. Charles made sure she never had to stand before one. Her back wages came through a legal settlement with penalties, benefits restoration, and written protection against retaliation. Every night worker misclassified under the same program was contacted by an attorney, in their own language when needed, and paid what the school had owed. Naomi received a scholarship, but only after she asked one question in Graham's office, while rain streaked the window behind her. "Is it just for me because I was loud enough?" Charles had no answer at first, so the scholarship changed. Children of custodians, cafeteria workers, guards, and maintenance staff became eligible, with their parents' employment status protected in writing. Weeks later, the lobby looked different. Margaret's portrait still hung under warm light, but beside it was a new wall, not for donors, but for the people who kept the school alive after everyone important went home. Marielle Baptiste's name was there. So was Mr. Alvarez's. Beneath the glass case rested the old timesheet, the cracked key card, and a small brass line Charles had approved only after Naomi read it twice and nodded. Dignity is not a donation. It is owed. That evening, Charles joined Naomi and Marielle in their small kitchen in Queens, not as a savior, but as a man learning how to sit at a table without owning the room. The soup was simple, the light was warm, and Naomi's old phone lay between them, still cracked, still saved. Charles offered to replace it. Naomi shook her head and slid it gently back into her backpack. "Not yet," she said. "This one knows how to tell the truth." Charles looked down, unable to speak, while across the quiet table, the little girl no one wanted to hear finally was.